Beautiful, beautiful. So just quick introduction for the recording. Welcome to this call. We're talking about ending the autoimmune epidemic to functional medicine. On the call today with Dr. Bob Rakowski. My name is Eric Higgins. I was going to say a functional medicine doctor. Once again, I am not a functional medicine doctor. I'm a functional movement coach, holistic health coach, and actor calling out of Portugal. I call myself one half of the Reishi warriors, as we're passionate about Reishi and sharing this with the world. We will touch on that for a small section of this call as well, but we're joined by one of the best in the game of functional medicine, Dr. Bob Rakowski, out of Houston, Texas, 30 years in clinical practice as a top clinical nutritionist, chiropractor, kinesiologist, and also has a degree in nursing, looking at root cause. How do we look at the root cause of the body? How do we address it? How do we give the body what it needs to heal in a holistic manner and become our absolute best? So we're talking about autoimmune today, Dr. Bob. Thank you so much for giving up your time. First of all, could you just share how exactly, first of all, do autoimmune challenges affect our daily lives and our health?
Wow. Well, let's just say in a very, very extreme way for those that are struggling. You know, the new stat is now we look at the Western world, which has more autoimmunity than a lot of the world. And we can get to that later, but about 1 in 6 people suffer autoimmunity, and the cost is about the equivalent as the cost of treating cancer. So it is really, really, really huge. You start looking at this and you go, what the heck is going on? You know, do immune systems suddenly hate people and instead of protecting them, try to kill them? Well, somebody's trying to sell that story, and they're selling it effectively because you know what, the strategies they're using aren't working. They're not really doing a good job at eradicating autoimmunity, and it just keeps rising exponentially year after year. And you know, it's time to get a hold of this. It's time to stop this pandemic of illness.
What, in your opinion, you've been in clinical practice for 30 years, you're in your 50s now, so you have a lot of years of wisdom under your belt. What do you see being some of the key contributors to the growth of autoimmunity, and what are some of the top ones that are on the rise?
Well, when you start looking at the causes, right, and I like you introducing root cause. When people come into me, they always want that answer. You know, they don't want to know what do we name it, but what's causing the problem. And, you know, my most generic answer is, my wonderful friend, you haven't made enough healthy choices to manifest the health that you deserve. So in the concept of extreme ownership, the individual typically has not taken good enough care of themselves. Now, you can get a viral infection and that can trigger autoimmunity. But the big four: stress, toxins, malnutrition, and I could say, you know, imbalance in physical activity or not enough physical activity, but ultimately obesity is a huge risk factor for immune dysregulation, including autoimmunity and cancer. So the big four, the deadly quartet, still exist. And we start looking at what are the most common autoimmune diseases. You know, they're trying to blame a lot of things. So, you know, there's this thing where you have the diagnostic database, the international diagnostic codes. And when they upgraded it from ICD-9 to ICD-10 about a decade ago, they added 55,000 medical diagnoses. So 14,000 wasn't enough. They added 55,000 medical diagnoses. So, you know, it's at least monthly, someone will come in with a diagnosis that I've never heard of. And I'll go ahead and I'll type in my search engine, you know, etiology of whatever diagnosis it is. And very often it says etiology unknown, suspected autoimmune. So what are some of the most common? How about the most common are those that, you know, we're just labeling that because we don't know the cause. But about 100 currently named autoimmune diseases. But I think if they have their way, they'll name thousands more. And I believe it's a disservice to humankind.
This is something I've seen in my own family as well, is also, I'll come back to that question later. I won't touch on that now, actually, because I'm going to go off on a tangent. I'll stay on point. But when it comes to nutrition, gut health, and autoimmune, what are the connections between those three? How are they interlinked?
Well, let's go with gut health first, because I think that's the most documented trigger. And it's been published now for over a decade that you can even eradicate autoimmune disease in many cases just by correcting the leaky gut phenomena. So understand that our gut is really designed to absorb nutrients in a state that the body can use them. And so that means breaking down food components into individual components, essential fatty acids, amino acids, and simple sugars. But when we have what's called a leaky gut, and when I teach leaky gut, I show a picture of people on tour in a tube. I'll call it a shark tube. So imagine a tube that's big enough that people can walk through it, that's all glass, going through an aquarium with great white sharks. And then now imagine that if that tube is the analogy of the gut, what if you had a leaky gut? Now, most people would think, well, water coming into the tube, that would suck, you're going to drown, and that would suck. But what if the hole was big enough that you were suddenly no longer in that protective tube, but now you're around those sharks? And you know what? If the sharks consider you a threat, they're going to kill you. Well, reality is if your body absorbs a protein, anything higher than 3 amino acids, then it says, okay, that's a foreign protein. That's not part of my body. Something's not part of my body, doesn't belong here. I'm going to kill it. And so think about this, you know, if someone needs a kidney transplant, what do? They look for a very close match. Well, why? Because the further it is away from their match, the faster the body will kill it. But even if it's a great match, they still give immunosuppressive drugs because the body says, wait a minute, that's not my kidney. I'm going to go kill it. So the gut is the biggest issue. Now, when we start looking at nutrition, malnutrition is the documented #1 cause of death on the planet, responsible for the vast majority of deaths. If you don't have the right nutrition, you're not going to have the ideal structure to keep the body, mind, and spirit healthy. And when you create a chronic inflammatory condition, putting in bad foods, you're more likely to trigger that leaky gut phenomena. So let's talk about malnutrition as being a cause of leaky gut, and leaky gut likely being the most documented cause of autoimmunity. But go back to the big four. Does stress cause leaky gut? Absolutely. Do toxins cause leaky gut? Yeah, they certainly can. How about malnutrition? Absolutely. What about physical activity? Well, believe it or not, that's a trigger as well. Life is motion. You move better, you live better.
Something you mentioned before, and I know people can kind of get their heads a bit confused about this as well. You mentioned before that food is information on a call not so long ago. And I just thought, wow, it's very interesting. Food is information. So we wonder, what kind of information are we putting into our body? If we're getting factory foods, if we're getting heavily sprayed foods, if we're getting a lot of plastic covered foods, if we're getting a lot of stress in our lives, if we're getting a lot of poor movement or lack of movement, there's a whole lot of bad information coming into our ecosystem, and that compounds. So we have a choice on a daily basis to what quality comes into our ecosystem, and what happens outside of us is none of our making, as Bob Proctor would say. So when it comes to that information coming in, I know you mentioned about the Magnificent Seven. How important is it for us to be eating organic foods and looking at quality over quantity?
Well, there's so many different ways to answer that, but let's start talking about organic and then back to this idea of information. So if people want an interesting search, they can type in this concept of forest bathing. And it's not just food that we eat, it's air that we breathe. And what they found is 3 days in the forest in a natural environment will improve immune function for at least a month. Now, that's documented in the medical literature with very powerful diagnostic tests. So everything is information, but let's go now to this organic circumstance. So if a plant has to struggle to survive, if it has to have an immune system to protect itself from invaders and from elements, it's a healthier plant, it's a stronger plant. And when we go back to this idea of information, do you want information from a very resilient species or from a sick, over-medicated, intoxicated being that couldn't even fend for itself? And I think we know the answer to that. But if we start looking at the outcome of this, look at what has happened to human health since we've been doing all this to the environment with the genetic modification, with the herbicides, with the insecticides, and with the fungicides. These choices, you know, at one point seemed to be a reasonable idea to enhance yield to feed a starving world. But now we know if we take better care of the plant, if we nourish the plant, then ultimately the plant can defend itself much better and doesn't need artificial ways to protect itself. So what we've done to the food, if we really looked at it, that's the real crime against humanity. Instead of taking what should be nourishing us, and that's ancient wisdom, let thy food be thy medicine. That was Hippocrates. Lucretius said, one man's food's another man's poison. And I've been saying this for decades. Today, most men's food is a poison for all humanity. Whether you're talking about putting these toxins into people or the sick people dragging down the wellness of the world, we've seen it. Who was vulnerable this last go round? It wasn't Eric Higgins. It wasn't the people that were, paying attention to their body, mind, and spirit, nourishing all the above. It was people that were making those genetically modified processed choices. And sadly, we said goodbye to a lot of those people. They didn't make it.
Yeah, I was listening on a podcast a couple of months ago about what was going on in India back in the 80s and 90s there, when they introduced those GMO seeds and made all these promises that they would have bigger yields, better crops. And then over that period of time, over 200,000 farmers committed suicide because their yields, their family crops were wiped out for generations. They did so much damage to the soil. They realized they were lied to. Nature will provide, and nothing will ever replace the power and ecosystem of nature. And I think there's a really powerful but upsetting message in that is, don't believe the hype. If it doesn't make sense, if it wasn't here 100 years ago, I remember you mentioned before, Dr. Bob, don't eat it, eat from the earth. And if someone comes along with a great idea to create a bigger yield for more profit, the alarm bells and the red flag should be going off. So just when you have a number of, we'll come back to nutrition in a moment, because there's a couple of things you mentioned during the week that I really wanted to highlight in this call, which for some people may be a little controversial. But when it comes to testing, there's a lot of testing that can be done for people that have autoimmune circumstance or potential. What do you feel are some of the most effective testing protocols for your patients when they present potential autoimmune challenges?
I'm going to answer that a lot of different ways. Since the gut is the number one trigger, probably a leaky gut test. Now, that's a functional test where they give a couple of things called lactulose and mannitol, and they're different size sugars, and one should be absorbed and one shouldn't. Then they collect urine and they say, okay, if you started absorbing things that were too big for most people to absorb, you have a leaky gut. But here's what I tell people: you have leaky gut until proven otherwise. And I can seal and heal your gut with a functional protocol for about the same amount of money to even find it. So here's the question: do you want to answer something that you likely have, or do you want to fix it for the same costs? And let people make their own choice on that. So that would be an obvious one. But if someone has a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease, well, then let's just go ahead and figure out, what is their level of antibodies? Because I want to follow that. We can look at rheumatoid antibodies. We can look at lupus antibodies. We can look at thyroid antibodies. Those are three of the more common ones that we see. And what we want to do is keep score. I did a consult today with a 47-year-old woman who previously had anti-nuclear antibodies, and her pattern was the hallmark of lupus. And this was beautiful. It resolved in 10 days, Eric, in 10 days. Now, that's exceptional. I tell people, it depends on the level of antibody and the level of compliance in the patient, a lot of other things going on there. But that 10-day resolution was pretty amazing. And on my Facebook and probably on my YouTube, if it's not there, I can put it there. I had a 73-year-old woman who had developed lupus, and we resolved it in 60 days, pre and post antibodies to show. Now, medicine will tell you, there's no cure for autoimmune disease. Okay, we're not going to call that a cure. We're just going to say it went in remission. But I have people that went into remission 25 years ago and are still in remission. Hey, we don't have to call it a cure. Let's just call it long-lasting remission, right? I'm pretty okay with that. Either way, the patient's not suffering anymore, and they're making better choices. And I'll tell you what, every aspect of their being improves with these better choices.
Wow, well, it's a funny world we live in, whatever way it is, whatever wording it takes, the results are the results, and the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So if for the sake of being compliant in this world, a little brackets of remission covers a cure, then keep doing what you're doing. What kind of protocols do you commonly introduce as well for someone that would present with an autoimmune circumstance?
Well, let's go with the big four: the stress, the toxins, the malnutrition, the physical inactivity. So stress, guess what? We're going to do the stress reset. Melatonin, theanine, Ganoderma spores every waking hour, anywhere from 7 to as much as 21 days. 21 days is someone absolutely stressed out of their mind, suffering severe stress issues, maybe PTSD, things like that. We do that stress reset. That's pretty big. In terms of toxins, clinical detox, stop putting the toxins in, detoxify your pantry, and then your body. And there are functional medicine foods to go with that. When we go with malnutrition, I recommend really good food choices. Then I'm going to recommend superfoods, our favorite, reishi, Ganoderma lucidum. Functional foods, usually to seal and heal the gut, potentially detox as well. Activated omega-3s, probiotics, a combination of D3, K2, and dot the I's, cross the T's with a good multivitamin. And then movement, well, there's probably nothing better right now than your functional fat loss challenge. Now, does everybody need fat loss? No, but I'll tell you what, when they move their body better, they're going to get better. And you and Heloisa have done such a phenomenal job at creating a protocol that anybody can do, regardless of current status, and have it graded in a way where if you haven't moved in 10 years, you have something that works for you. Or if you're a modern superhero and film star, in the Northman, well, then it's good for you too.
We'll get you no matter where your level is. Absolutely. We can touch on that towards the end as well in a little bit more detail, as we are extending the registration for that for an epic cause. We will touch on it in more detail towards the end of the call. I think would be awesome. But when it comes to medicinal mushrooms, Dr. Bob, like reishi and Ganoderma, with these adaptogenic properties, how powerful are they for balancing our immune system, or as you mentioned before, modulating our immune system?
Well, that's a proven medical benefit that we can actually make that claim. So you go to PubMed, you type in Ganoderma, you type in immunomodulation, and that says that's one of the major proven benefits. And by the way, within that same article, they said that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because when you look at it being a nice natural anti-inflammatory, helping to seal and heal the gut, helping to modulate the microbiome, all those things are critical. But let's go to this concept of immune modulation. There is a time and place for calming the immune system, and there's even a pharmaceutical time and place for calming the immune system. So I'll tell people, if someone has a serious head injury and there's brain swelling, if the brain swells too much, it'll herniate through the base of the skull, and that will kill the patient. So I've got a video of a guy where they took 25% of his skull off and put it in a dish next to him, so that swelling didn't force the brain through the skull. It can swell wide all at once. If it goes down, you're going down. You're going down for the count forever. And so dexamethasone, super powerful. Could we call it an immunomodulator? No, it's an immunosuppressor. Corticosteroids, cortisol, dexamethasone's 30 times stronger than that. And there's a time and a place for that. And possibly even with autoimmune circumstance. So you start looking, if someone's really out of control because their body's so unhealthy, and maybe they're attacking their nervous system, their neuromuscular junctions with like myasthenia gravis, which, by the way, there was a bunch of that triggered by a recent medical experiment, that I think we're going to find out probably wasn't a good one. Then there's a time and a place even for those strong pharmaceuticals. But there are no contraindications to Ganoderma lucidum, no known drug interaction, no known toxicity. Where we get into trouble is if we make a claim, hey, it's going to cure anything. We don't want to say that, but is it proven to modulate the immune system? Yeah, rock solid evidence there. So it can calm down autoimmunity, it can calm down allergy, or it can pick up the immune system to kill infection or cancer. And by the way, you can have more than one imbalance going on in your body at one time. You could have an autoimmunity, you could have a cancer, you could have an infection, you could have allergies. So, how about one-stop shopping for all that good stuff?
I love that. Could you possibly open up, if it's okay, Dr. Bob, just for people to see if they're watching the recording or they're not familiar with PubMed, where they would actually search that, how they would do that, if they were just to pull up,
sure,
a search on autoimmunity and Ganoderma.
Let's go here.
Well, you're looking for that as well, Dr. Bob. I love the fact that our partners decided to put this top superfood inside of things that people love to do. So they take the guesswork out of it. They just allow so many people to enjoy this in such a simple way as I know in Chinese medicine, it's extremely bitter and it's not really part of daily life. It's not really something that people would wake up and go, fantastic, I'm going to boil the pot and put some really sharp tasting substance in my mouth to make me feel better. Could you just share the beauty of coffee and tea in a moment? And if anyone is sensitive to caffeine, is this okay? Is this a good alternative rather than the regular acidic coffee or tea?
Sure. So now you built in part of the answer in that, which is really, really awesome. So one, when we start looking at what people do every day, around the world, the majority of people, it's not the minority, it's the majority of people drink coffee or tea every single day. And, for things to work, you have to do it consistently. There's the compound effect. So, I'm a big fan of nutraceuticals. I have a bunch of them in my cabinet. Now, is there a single nutraceutical in a capsule or pill or powder that I've never missed a dose on, even under a pretty strict protocol for let's say a period of more than 30 days? And no, I promise you, I've missed doses over the course of 30 days. Have I ever missed my coffee or tea? No way. No way. Absolutely not. From the time I started drinking it as a teen to now my 57th year, every day, unless there was something unusual where I didn't have access to it. And let me tell you, it's a day where I missed it. And if I could have gotten some, I would have. So now we go with reishi-infused Ganoderma coffee and tea. And as you mentioned, alkalized. So coffee has more than 30 different acids in it. That's like coffee.org. And Ganoderma, well, let's go with it this way. The number one toxin that the body produces is actually carbon dioxide, which in the blood forms carbonic acid. So we're all a bit too acid. So all of our elimination routes get rid of acid. We buffer acid by at least a dozen proven mechanisms. But one of the things we want to do is not put any other acids in our body if we can avoid it. So we alkalize the coffee for the health benefit, but it also maximizes the efficacy of the enzymes within the Ganoderma. And that's really, really, really powerful. So on my screen, I pulled up PubMed.gov, and the first thing I do is I type in Ganoderma on over 3,000 published studies. And as you know, it also goes by the name reishi. It also goes by Ling Qi. We start looking at that. And there's some that fall into that category where it's not named Ganoderma. But then I'm going to type in immune first, because there are over 300 studies. And notice what the first one says: immunomodulatory activities of Ganoderma. Next one, modulates the gut microbiome, the bugs in our gut, in a way that makes things better. Another immunomodulator, anti-cancer, well, that's through immune modulation. And again, we keep going all the way through. Now, what's a little disappointing to me is, even though I can show PubMed says Ganoderma can be used to treat and or prevent autoimmune disease, this one really needs to improve in terms of what we're seeing in terms of PubMed. So only 13 very specific studies that call out Ganoderma and autoimmune. I think we're going to see in the coming decades that there will be hundreds and then thousands, because this pandemic of illness needs to be resolved. And Ganoderma is, in my clinical practice, a universal step in that process.
Yeah, I love that. I really see with the likes of Paul Stamets now, just sharing the unique benefits of reishi and how it really can be a powerful addition to anyone's daily lives and daily health. So we would encourage you guys. I'm getting some feedback there, Dr. Buck. Is your receiver on your phone gone back up, perhaps? You can hear the sound loop. It does that sometimes on Instagram. It's a sneaky one. There we go. Perfect. So we would encourage you guys, get an experience, have an experience, reach back to the person who invited you onto this call. They're most likely partnered with us, sharing this incredible superfood and such an awesome delivery system. And it doesn't get any easier than that. As I quite bluntly say to my friends, family, and clients and new friends that I meet, if you can't change your coffee and tea to live a healthier life and enjoy this superfood, I don't think I'll probably be able to help you, because it doesn't get any more accessible than that. But I just want to touch base on some of the questions that are here coming into the chat, Dr. Bob. We have one question here from, it's Voom. Are there any side effects to Ganoderma that clients need to look for?
Oh, so here's the official stance on that. No known drug interactions, no known toxicity. But now let's go to side effects. Sure, you can see that. So when it starts promoting detox, I tell people the symptoms of chronic poisoning, fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, and anxiety, any one or more of those can happen as Ganoderma starts to promote detox. And so when we, if we look at fatigue, well, it's great for mitochondria. So it's a long-term solution. We look at sleep disturbance, people that consume Ganoderma fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, longer, wake up more refreshed. That's in PubMed. Intestinal distress, it's great for the gut. It's great for the microbiome. Allergy symptoms, guess what? It modulates that. Headaches, even the International Journal of Pharmacy says that it can eradicate migraine, in the majority of patients, which is really pretty doggone phenomenal. Allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, anxiety, the two brain issues, 100+ studies on Ganoderma and brain, and it's known as an anxiolytic, meaning it can buffer anxiety as a natural GABA facilitator. So across the board, all of these things will ultimately be mediated by it, but sometimes, depending on where you are, it may feel like you take a few steps backward on your way forward. So keep in mind, if you jump into the functional fat loss protocol and you go maybe 1 octave above where you probably should have started, what price are you going to pay? You're going to be sore. Now, is that a bad thing? No, I'm going to call it a good thing. You moved your body. I'm happy for you. And if you followed your expert guidance, you're not going to hurt yourself, but are you going to need some recovery time? Yeah, you might want to back it off for a little bit in that case. So whenever my patients have a reaction like that, I'm going to tell them, you have a couple choices. You can back it off. We can add ways to improve the detox, or you can power through it, and so it depends on who's on the other side of it and what's going on in their life. But the majority of people that come and see me, they power through it.
Nice. I see there's a question here as well. Just welcomes from South Africa. Thank you, Molly Rose. Adri asks, what is tinnitus and what is the best way to treat it? There's also a second question. What is Meniere's disease and what is the best treatment for that?
So tinnitus is going to be like a buzzing or ringing in the ears. And there's some type of inner ear problem. And, there's a number of different causes. We start looking at Meniere's, that's considered autoimmune. That's a component to it where there's damage from the immune system on the inner ear. But, if we showed pictures, and I just might, because when I teach autoimmunity, let's go back to a share. One of the things that I've told people for years is that cell injury precedes autoimmune disease. And so keep in mind, we talked about the kidney transplant. Your immune system is supposed to differentiate your cells from cells that are not your own. But that Marine there, that brave soldier, suffered 3rd-degree burns. And I tell people, if you're guarding the military base and you use facial recognition, this guy shows up, you let him in. This guy shows up, even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. So cell injury precedes autoimmune disease. And we want to figure out what caused that problem. And the candidates are stress, toxins, malnutrition, physical inactivity. But in either case, the goal is to get healthier. And I've seen plenty of people resolve tinnitus, and I've seen cases of Meniere's resolve as well. And Meniere's often has a component of vertigo as well. And that's, unfun for the people that have it. But is it resolvable? Sure. In many cases, yes. So if we get after cause and address root cause, then we get the effect we're looking for.
Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Bob. I receive a question in here from Molly as well. She asks, how safe is it, Dr. Bob, to wean a 78-year-old man off his hypertension meds if he's taking it since 2005? He's also been consuming reishi mushroom products since 2009. Thank you.
Well, sometimes long-term antihypertensives are a really good idea. If people aren't addressing cause, they're better off, in my opinion, with a drug than having a system where high blood pressure, they call it the silent killer, it's feed forward. And what do I mean by that? Well, the lining of our arteries are muscles. And so if I have a tube here, and I'm going to show to Instagram in here, and the inside of this tube is muscles. When those muscles grow, they grow in and the tube gets smaller and pressure is going to increase. And that's a problem. So hypertension can kill you. And if you get a hold of it naturally, if you lose the weight, especially the visceral adipose tissue, fatty liver, fatty kidney, these are things that really begin to aggravate high blood pressure and really are at the cause of it, then you can go there. So if the individual's been well controlled and they don't have arteries which have grown inward, so where if they wean off, they get themselves in a crisis, well, ultimately, my best answer is a qualified medical prescriber is the person to take them off of there. Now, I have taught seminars all over the world, over 10,000 hours, and before the recent shutdown of live events, every single year I had a progressive audience of medical practitioners that were saying, you know what, I'm pursuing functional medicine. My patients don't want another drug. They want a real solution. And so every year that number grew and grew and grew. And I would ask at my seminars, hey, how many of you medical practitioners were taught to put people on drugs? Every hand went up. How many of you were taught how to take people off of drugs? Very few hands went up. And now that's in the West, right? Maybe it's different in the East, but that was in my audiences here in the US. And what do we represent? Well, last I checked, we're 4.4% of the world's population consuming 52% of the world's prescription drugs. Extreme imbalance there. And why? Because 52%. They put them on, they don't take them off. How long do I need to take that? Forever. And why is that? Well, because you can't be healthy without it. But here's what one of my mentors asked. Okay, so what if we took a perfectly healthy person and put them on drugs? What would happen? They'd get sick. So why do we take sick people, put them on drugs and think they're going to get healthy? Now, I'm not anti-drug. Drugs can be life-saving. They can be, especially in terms of hypertension, type 1 diabetes. These are good uses, but the guidelines are lowest dose, shortest duration. If you can correct the problem with, and get the person healthier where they don't need it, better choice across the board, better choice.
For sure. Absolutely. I see that. One last question from Hannah. If someone is allergic to mushrooms, are they safe to consume, reishi?
In all probability, yes. And I even have a YouTube video on that. So, someone comes in and they'll tell me, well, I'm allergic to milk. And I'll ask them, are you allergic to human milk, cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep milk, killer whale milk? Which milk are you allergic to? And they say, well, cow's milk. I said, well, how about sheep's milk? No, I'm fine with that. So which mushroom are you allergic to? Probably not a medicinal mushroom, probably a food-based mushroom. So when you start ingesting food-based mushrooms, we're talking multi-gram quantities, not kilogram, but certainly hundreds of grams, to get a dose. Well, when you're consuming reishi, one medicinal mushroom that modulates allergy in milligram quantity. And allergy is a quantity-dependent phenomena. So it's very improbable, but, test it, see it, be very, very cautious. And by the way, if you're the type of person that has an anaphylactic response to mushrooms, and by the way, we've had people that have suffered with anaphylaxis resolve that issue with Ganoderma. So be smart. If you've got a mushroom allergy, take a very low dose, have your EpiPen handy. And here's what I predict. You're not going to have the response. And over time, your immune markers should be much, much better because that is a benefit you can take to the bank. It is an immune modulator, meaning it's proven to calm down allergy.
Awesome. I just wanted to touch on two more things before we end the call, Dr. Bob. I know you've had a number of patients over the years with autoimmune circumstance kind of come to you and ask for help and ask for guidance. And I know Emily Morrow was one of those cases, a partner of yours actually, who had such a powerful turnaround in her circumstance that she started to share this in her network because it was an organic thing to do. So of course, I know you have doctor-patient privilege, but I know for some of Emily's story, you can share. What was going on with Emily and what was the kind of turnaround that you saw over those number of months?
She had 2 confirmed medical autoimmune circumstances, confirmed with antibodies, lab testing. She was, 30 pounds overweight, jaundice, and spiraling down. And so her chiropractor, her functional medicine practitioner said, let's consult with Dr. Bob. And part of what I did was reishi, Ganoderma spores. I had her do them every single waking hour. Well, the turnaround was certainly life-changing, almost mind-boggling. I asked Emily if she had before and after photos. She said, "Are you kidding? There's no way I would take a photo of me when I was 30 pounds overweight and jaundiced. I didn't even like looking in the mirror." But you look at her now, she's absolutely beautiful. Well, one of the fun things about Emily is she was anti-network marketing. She had a bad experience. She says, "No, I'm not going to do network marketing." But she realized that Reishi coffee was too good not to share. So what she'd do is she'd get on her Instagram and she'd say, "Listen, I don't know what's in your cup, but what's in my cup is magic and life enhancing. And I'm going to encourage you to try it. And if you want to try it, I'll send you a 7-day supply for $20. Message me and let's see if it changes your life like it did mine." Well, that approach, piquing curiosity, has built a multi-million-dollar international business where that was her only mechanism of promotion. Now, let me share this. I might say the same thing, but I can't say it in the same way because I haven't had the same experience. If something has changed your life, took you from the, literally, Emily felt like she was snatched from the jaws of death and catapulted into an elite being, I promise you, everything about you is going to come through in that message. So we could pay an actor to say, "Hey, try what's in my cup," but it's not going to come across with the same message of someone who had that type of response. Now, what's been my response? Really good. I look better, feel better, am better in every category of life: mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, impactfully. I can share that from the heart, and I do multiple times every week. And I have a wonderful international organization. And how many of these stories am I aware of? Thousands. Thousands of people had that level of response. So what will happen with you? Well, why don't you get back to whoever tagged you on this Zoom or Facebook replay or Instagram and say, "I want to try that," and give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Here's what I know. I don't know if it'll help you, but it sure won't hurt you. And you probably enjoy a delicious cup of coffee or tea.
I love your enthusiasm when you start talking about stories of people you've helped, Dr. Bob. It really lights you up to see who you really are, what you're really about, and why you do what you do. And just giving you a nod and of appreciation for making that choice a number of years back, because we all wouldn't be on this call if it wasn't for you making that decision to be inspired to go and share this with the world. And just to wrap up on the call, I want to let you guys know, if you already don't know, some of our partners, actually how I was introduced to this concept and this business and this amazing health vehicle. Hannah and Pete are actually going through a really tough life challenge at the minute. Hannah needs a life-saving treatment in Germany. They're there right now for day 1, I believe, of their treatment. And they have to raise a pretty large sum of money privately because they're not covered on their NHS. So myself and Isa, my partner, wife, and amazing graphic designer, decided to pool our skills together. Myself as a coach, Isa as a designer, put together a 30-day functional fat loss challenge to incentivize people to raise money for Hannah's treatment, as it's all going to her treatment, and encourage people to get up and move in a way that nourishes your body. It doesn't just put you in a state of pain, but it actually puts you in a state of pain or a state of progress. So multiple different elements of training, all done 30-35 minutes per day. There's Hannah there smiling away, being an absolute lady warrior.
That's today in Germany. Yeah. And that one you get to see her absolute amazing beauty. And then they also sent one. Where's the other one? Boy, this is finicky when we're on Zoom and sharing screen.
Yeah.
Let me go back. That's how I do it. I had blown that one up. So that was her. Oh boy, I didn't look too closely at that. You can see blood. Why? Because they're working on her brain. And you talk about a pillar of strength and inspiration, and just an absolutely amazing, beautiful soul. Our world is so much better with Hannah in it. She beat brain cancer once. The circumstances of the world, in a perfect world, she'd be back in Houston, Texas, being treated again. But politics are keeping her from getting here. They are actually, making demands on her that aren't a really good demand for someone fighting brain cancer in order to come to the States. So, guess what? They have to raise 250,000 pounds for Germany for this therapy. So, love and prayers to Pete and Hannah. God bless her amazing self, and Pete, the inspirator. Actually, you know what Pete's inspiration is? Hannah. And she inspires me too. She's the inspirator of the two, and they're both epic. So big love and prayers to them.
Absolutely, guys. So I posted a link for the challenge in the chat there. If you guys are keen to know more about it, it's a link to Hannah's GoFundMe. We just ask, donate a minimum of £50 towards Hannah's treatment. That means you get the 30 days training with us every day in follow-along training modules on your time schedule in a private Facebook group. It's only 30 to 5 minutes per day. You've got nutritional advice from the amazing Dr. Bob Rakowski, who's right in front of your eyes right now. You'll also have mindset advice from Pete Cohen, the Mr. Inspirator, the people's coach, and a fun environment for you to blossom on your health and fitness journey and create an environment of support. And for any of you guys who really go all out and really knuckle down, there's up to $1,000 worth of reishi infused products for the winners. And that's from our amazing sponsors, Organo, who are just said, you know what, you guys are doing a fundraiser. Let's give you a great prize to incentivize more people. So if not you, share this link with your network. Say, look, who wants to get in great shape, have fun, and support an amazing woman on her health journey for 30 days? It's only going to run you £50. You can pool together with friends, do what you got to do to make it happen. And you will be contributing to not only yourself, but also to Hannah and Pete. So it's so great to be on this call, Dr. Bob. I feel your enthusiasm. I hope you guys feel ours also. So go take action. It won't take it by itself. So get back to the person who invited you to this call, or if you saw this stream on Instagram, reach out to us and let us know if you'd like to have an experience. Would you like to be part of our functional fat loss challenge? Or if you have any questions whatsoever, I will hand over to you, Dr. Bob. We're just coming up to 2 p.m. Central. So I'll leave the closing call to you. Last point, Saturday, we will have a conversation around the business, our digital franchise. Why would we be doing a business in a changing world? Why not is the question. We all need more choices in life. We all should be looking at multiple income streams in life.
Eric, I don't know if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can on the Zoom, because somehow I lost you on the Zoom. Can you hear me okay? Adri, I see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, you can. Beautiful. All right, it must have been your internet, Eric. So, I usually wrap up with 4 questions. I'm going to slightly tweak them this time. So the first question is why? Why'd you take the time to join us today? So many other things you could do. And the second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not be a part of something that literally makes the world better? But here's my next question. Why not help one of the most beautiful couples, one of the most beautiful ladies in the battle of her life that has been complicated by politics, which that should never be in the way of health? Third question is why not you? Someone's going to say, you know what, 50 pounds, that's an investment in my health. Eric and Issa have gone the extra mile to create not a 50-pound program, but infinitely value program, because it will launch you to your best you. And here's the final question. Why not now? The longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are to act on it. So go ahead and join the Functional Fat Loss Challenge. Get back to whoever referred you to this and say, I want to know what was in Emily's cup. I want to have that experience, and let's make that happen. By the way, my cup is thoughts become things. Choose good ones. Well, what could be better than thoughts of love and healing energy for our beautiful friend? And with that said, if you're in that part of the world, good night and God bless. If you're in this part of the world, good day and God bless. Let's make our world better. So long all.